Today's talk is going to address a phenomenon that I'm assuming fairly few people would find relevant because I'm addressing a small group of people who not only identify as spiritual, but are also photographers and filmers. So for those specific few, I want to share my thoughts on a phenomenon that I came across myself in my early days as both a very keen hobbyist photographer and as a Gnostic originally. So at the time, I was working on this reasonably large landscape photography project, and at the same time, I had gotten back into practicing astral projection more seriously and was having vivid experiences every night. And what I found was that I was always coming across very interesting and mysterious dream landmarks that I would occasionally, but unintentionally, revisit every now and then. So this really intrigued me because I was younger and I was getting to know the various neighboring cities around the greater Vancouver area where I live. So many places in the physical world, here in the physical world, were new to me and even less familiar when I explored them in my dreams. So I became fascinated by these dreams and experiences. I would come across a new and unexplored place every week or so, visit the place a few more times in preceding dreams, and each time I would wake up really inspired and eager to get out and drive around for a few hours in the hopes that I would find the same location in the physical world. I did this for most of the dream landmarks because most of them seemed familiar enough for me to believe that I'd passed by them a long time ago when I was a young boy visiting Vancouver from the island. So this was a very exciting routine for me. But here's what I want to address to those particular people who also have this kind of fascination with dreams and dream photography or sightseeing. First off, dreams have a mysterious allure that tends to enchant us. It's that animated, fluxus, shape-shifting nature that they have that make them so intriguing to us. So one thing that dreams can do is make everything you see fascinating. The dream house you're in, the dream replica of the city you live in, the dream people you interact with, and so on. And what tends to happen is that we become really intrigued by the most mundane things we come across. And part of the magic behind this is the fact that nothing maintains a constant form in the dream world or astral plane. So everything is shape-shifting from moment to moment. Now, for most people, generally speaking, the fascination we experience is a good thing because your dreams are actually inspiring you to look at everyday appearances from a different perspective and appreciate them more. But on the other hand, if you're a spiritual person walking the path seriously, and you're finding yourself becoming obsessed with things you see in your dreams, and all you want to do with your spare time is wake up and draw or paint everything you saw, or like me, spend hours driving around looking for that dream place so you can photograph it, then you could potentially end up wasting a lot of time every day on activities that you really shouldn't be spending so much time on. Not only that, but as a passionate artist or hobbyist, it's really that passion and fascination that is counterintuitive to spiritual work. Because, when you become obsessed with something, you love that thing so much more than anyone else. Other people don't even get it. The way that you see it, that hobby or thing, you don't see it for what it actually is. And on top of that, you're attached to it. So with dreams, for example, it's very easy to become enchanted by the psychedelic appearances and believe many things to be more significant than they actually are. Especially for the detail-oriented artist, the artists and journalists out there who enjoy writing or recreating the things they see in the astral plane. We need to take a moment to reflect in the morning and reconsider if if what we're excited about is really worth writing about, or painting about, or whatever you do. In my case, as a landscape photographer, the biggest setback I had back then was my over-precision in finding dreamscapes in the physical world, and missing the point of these dream photograph locations, and never being certain as to whether or not the location I found was the same place that I saw in my dreams. I was never sure, and because I didn't understand the point of these locations, I continued to search for more places in the hopes that I'd find more similar locations that I could compare with one another, right? To make sure that I found the exact place. And this was a time-consuming mistake, because what I realized over time was that the whole point of all of these locations was to simply capture landscapes that were unique or peculiar, mesmerizing, colossal, or nostalgic enough to look like they came from dreams. So it wasn't about finding the same locations that I saw in my dreams, but rather that the places I found physically were just as impressive, strange, and mysterious and captivating as the dream places I would come across. So here's my advice to you. As a dream artist and spiritualist, since your dreams are a source of inspiration, you need to prioritize your ideas because you're getting a lot of them with all the phenomenon you see. And the thing is, not everything you see in your dreams may be worth writing about or making art about. Many interesting dream things we come across are actually very mundane, everyday appearances. So I recommend that you have a good understanding of the point of your dream art ideas. Right? If you're so fascinated by a particular subject or site in a dream, then what point is it giving you? Like, what are the elements that it has that make it stand out more than other dream subjects you've seen? As I said in my case, when I thought about this, I realized that I didn't need to capture the exact dream locations to get a dream effect in my photography. What I needed was to find places that simply had mysterious dreamlike characteristics. That was the point, the quality that allured me. Now, for the explorers out there who are trying to find these dream places in the physical world, you should ask the same question. Is the dream landmark really worth trying to find, or is it just another mundane commonplace? If you're choosing a place to film or photograph, is this the only place that does the job? Or can you find other places that carry the same vibe or the same effect? Now, regarding finding these places in the physical world, these dream places, here's some advice I have that may clarify some uncertainty. You have to keep in mind that nothing looks precisely the same in the dream world as it does in the physical. The nature of the astral plane is to flow and shapeshift, not to mention the relaxed quality of gravity that it has. The nature that it has to make everything hover and float, right? When you try to jump in a dream, oftentimes you'll just float. You won't, or if you jump off something, you won't fall as fast typically. So pretty much everything, but anyway, pretty much everything you see is surprisingly, going back to this point of things looking vaguely similar to what we're familiar with and shape-shifting, pretty much everything we see is much like an AI-generated image of something where the main characteristics and associations are just scrambled up together to make a very familiar but generic-looking appearance. This is why it's always a bit uncertain as to whether or not we have discovered the same place or thing in the physical world as we did in a dream. So to save you time, I can tell you from experience that most of the time when you find yourself coming across a place that looks awfully similar and feels familiar to a place you saw in a dream, it is that place. If it has the same general quality and a few of the same particular characteristics, it is that place. This took me a while to realize, but it just became clear that with how shape-shifting and generic the dream world is, you can fairly assume that a similar looking thing in the dream world is the same thing you saw in the physical world and vice versa. I've passed through a number of very vaguely similar looking places in the physical world, only to realize years down the road that even though these places didn't have the exact shape and form and face of direction, there weren't any better locations in my city or area to say that I would be mistaken to call these places dream locations. And I knew that this was all within a certain range. These were all local places. I knew that much. I could tell this was my home city and my dream. It wasn't like I was wandering through dream Chicago or New York and misinterpreting that as my hometown, and so of course nothing was matching. No, this was my hometown city that I was mechanically dreaming through. That's why I was there, because it's the place that I live, the place I repeat the most actions. So this was another one of those things I wish I knew back then that I know right now, talks that I always hope ends up reaching some of the young people who could really benefit from this advice. This is just one example of how we can avoid missing the point of a situation or thing by keeping our distance from small, insignificant, or irrelevant details and asking ourselves what the most important factors of something are for us. So that's all I have about this dream-chasing niche hobby. Sabe sata suki hontu.